Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Chanda Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Chanda Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vandachari Yamuna Tira Vandachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Bhavava Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vandachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading today from the Srimad-bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 19, Text 16. Chapter is called King Yayati Achieves Liberation. So we'll chant the Sanskrit. Yadushyaja Durmat Yadushyaja Durmati Vir Jiryato Yana Jiryate Tam Krishnam Dukanivaham Sharma Kama Drutam Shajit Yadrishya Jadramati Vir Jiryato Yana Jiryate Tam Krishnam Dukanivaham Sharma Kama Drutam Shajit Yadrishya Jadramati Vir Jiryato Yana Jiryate Tam Krishnam Dukanivaham Sharma Kama Drutam Shajit Krishna Jadaratmi Vir Jiryato Yana Jiryate Tam Krishnam Dukanivaham Sharma Kama Drutam Shajit Yadrishya Jadaratmi Vir Jiryato Yana Jiryate Krishnam Dukanivaham Sharma Kama Drutam Shajit Yadrishya Jadaratmi Vir Jiryato Yana Jiryate Tam Krishnam Dukanivaham Sharma Kama Drutam Shajit Yadrishya Jadaratmi Vir Jiryato Yana Jiryate Tam Krishnam Dukanivaham Sharma Kama Drutam Shajit Krishna Jadaratmi Vir Jiryato Yana Jiryate Tam Krishnam Dukanivaham Sharma Kama Drutam Shajit Word for word. Ya, that which. Dushkaja, extremely difficult to give up. Durativi, by persons too attached to material enjoyment. Jiryataha, even by one who is an invalid because of old age. Ya, that which, na, not, Jiryate, is vanquished. Tam, such, Krishnam, desire. Dukkha nivaham, which is the cause of all tribulations. Sharma kamaha, a person desiring his own happiness. Druptam, very soon. Shajat, should give up. Translation. For those who are too attached to material enjoyment, sense gratification is very difficult to give up. Even when one is an invalid because of old age, one cannot give up such desires for sense gratification. Therefore, one who actually desires happiness must give up such unsatisfied desires, which are the cause of all tribulations. Repeat after me. For those who are too attached to material enjoyment, sense gratification is very difficult to give up. Even one is an invalid because of old age, one cannot give up such desires for sense gratification. Therefore, one who actually desires happiness must give up such unsatisfied desires, which are the cause of all tribulations. Srila Prabhupada purport. We have actually seen, especially in the Western countries, that men who have reached more than 80 years of age still go to nightclubs and pay heavy fees to drink wine and associate with women. Although such men are too old to enjoy anything, their desires have not ceased. Time deteriorates even the body itself, which is a medium for all sensual satisfaction. But even when a man becomes old and invalid, his desires are strong and to dictate that he go here and there to satisfy the desires of his senses. Therefore, by the practice of Bhakti Yoga, one should give up his lusty desires, as explained by Sri Yamunacharya. Yada Vadi Mama Chaita Krishna Padara Vinde Nava Rasa Dharmyan Yanyu Jatum Rantum Asit Tada Vadi Vadalari Sangame Svaryamane Bhavati Mukha Vikara Shushtu Nishti Vanam Cha. When one is Krishna conscious, he gets more and more happiness by discharging duties for Krishna. Such a person spits on sense gratification, especially that of sexual enjoyment. An experienced advanced devotee is no longer interested in sexual life, sex life. The strong desire for sex can be subdued only by advancement in Krishna consciousness. Om Ajnana Svedandasya Ganatana Shavakaya Chakshurun Vitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So this is an ongoing theme throughout all of Srila Prabhupada's books. And 16, 9th canto, 19th chapter, verse 16. So, and of course, Srila Prabhupada wrote these purports, I'm not sure exactly what years, but it was before 1977. So at that time, he was saying that we have seen, especially in Western countries, the men who have reached more than 80 years of age still go to nightclubs and pay heavy fees to drink wine and associate with women. Of course, it's not just the Western countries anymore. It's very common everywhere, even in India, even in holy places in India. These things are going on. Because the desire for material enjoyment is, it cannot be satisfied. You cannot, it doesn't matter what you do, no matter how much you, no matter how you try to satisfy your material senses more and more, you'll never be satisfied. And even up to the point of very old age, when your body cannot even perform any sensual, especially sexual type activities, even up to that point, desire is there, but you cannot satisfy those desires. So Srila Prabhupada was pointing this out, and he also says that that it's very difficult by any material means. It's very difficult to give up these desires. Even if someone thinks, "Oh, so many years I've spent engaged in all these, material activities, sensual activities. Maybe I should give it up." But if it's without a higher taste and the purification of the path of Krishna consciousness, it's not possible to give it up. You can't. So that's the special blessing that we get with regard to Srila Prabhupada and from the previous acharyas. It's a very special blessing. First of all, to understand that there is some purpose to life other than simply sense gratification. There's something much higher in life than material enjoyment. And Srila Prabhupada starts off with, because spiritual life actually starts off with what? What's the first lesson of spiritual life? You're not the material body. You're a spirit soul. There's no question of, right? There's no question of becoming, advancing spiritually, unless we at least understand in principle that we are spiritual, that we're not the material body. It seems very, after years of practicing, they say, "Oh, of course," obviously. But in the beginning, we basically grow up learning in material society. We basically grow up learning, or not being taught at least, that we are the material body. Even in different religions, they talk about that this body is us, and there may be a soul there somewhere, but the body is us. I am this body, right? And that bodily concept is what ties us completely to the material world, because the body and the senses are going to push us for more and more material enjoyments. So by the mercy of the acharyas, we have gotten this opportunity to take up this path of Krishna consciousness, and Srila Prabhupada mentions here the this book we just read, sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti means actually the practice of devotional service. The practice of devotional service. Sadhana bhakti does not mean, it's not like you you say you learn how to play the piano or something. You can do that, and you can practice that too. The bhakti yoga practice, sadhana bhakti practice, means that there are certain prescribed activities that we do that are actually will help us to progress on the spiritual path. Just like it's for those who are, and then there's activities that we do that are in sadhana bhakti. They are. It's not that we just do them and we go on to something else. Those same activities we continue. Sadhana bhakti means that we chant Hare Krishna mantra, right? We chant the Hare Krishna mantra. We avoid the 4 sinful activities, which actually bind us, would bind us more and more to the material concept, the concept of life. And we are, by that practice of these different aspects of sadhana bhakti, we are gradually purifying our existence. Srila says just like the child has a natural ability to walk. They cannot walk immediately when they're born, but the ability is inside. It's in their they have the physical ability and the drive to ultimately to walk. So the same, and in due course, by practice, that ability becomes manifested. So in the same way, we have the natural ability to be fully Krishna conscious, but the process is not it doesn't just happen. We have to practice it. So we practice chanting Hare Krishna until our chanting becomes perfect and pure. It's free from the 10 offenses. We do services like, say, we're engaging in deity worship. So in the very, very beginning of Krishna consciousness, I think, and devotees first had opportunity to serve different deities. They did that, but I'm sure there were many even misconceptions in the beginning. But by going through following the regulations and rising early in the morning and regularly dressing the deities and cooking for the deities and keeping some regulation like that sadhana bhakti purified them and us. I'm also there. It purifies us, right? What other activities do we do in sadhana bhakti that help us to advance? Anyone? Read the books. Yes, and maybe sell the books too. Yeah. That will come. Anyone else? Anything else? Prasadams? Yeah. Oh yes, prasadam is the secret weapon. Prasadam. In fact, without prasadam, Srila Prabhupada said that. He says my secret weapon was prasadam. It says, in fact, Srila Prabhupada came to the Miami temple in 1975, and during one of the classes, he says, he looked out to devotees and he saw, many of his, at that time, were older devotees at that time. And he says, you've all come because of prasadam, right? And then he asked specifically who was the temple president here at that time. His name was Abhiram. Abhiram. So he said, isn't that right, Abhiram? we all came because of prasadam. So prasadam is very, very important because we all like to eat, and if we can eat food that has been offered to Lord Krishna, then that is very, very special. It's not ordinary food. It's actually the best thing. You can't find anything better outside of the Krishna consciousness, even materially speaking. And the prasadam is, because if we regularly take prasadam and we don't go out and eat bhoga and things that are not being offered and cannot be offered to Krishna, then we'll get purified. That's a very important part of the sadhana bhakti. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that the devotees of the Lord the verse. Anyway, it's the verse saying how the devotees of the Lord eat only food that's been offered first for sacrifice, and if one eats food that has not been offered first for sacrifice, then he verily eats only sin. Those are the words Srila Prabhupada used, but they're actually what Krishna uses. That's the translation. So we are strict on taking prasadam and only prasadam, and not eating outside because it just tastes good, but it's not offered or offerable to Krishna. Then is a very big point in helping us to advance. Because if we're eating things which are not offered to Lord Krishna, then what will happen? We will become, like he said, it'll produce sinful activities, which will bind us and make us forget our position. Sometimes sometimes when someone might say, well, I was very strict. One devotee once told me they had been very strict in not eating anything that was not offered, made by devotees and offered it was offered prasadam. They're very strict like that. And then they said one time they said I was hungry. I ate some potato chips or something, and immediately the consciousness went down. But then the question was, how are others who seem to eat these other things outside all the time, and seem to have it seems that it doesn't drive them down? And I said, because the more we eat things that are not offered and offerable to Lord Krishna, the more we eat them, then what happens? It actually lowers our consciousness, and that same lower consciousness, when which what we're using to analyze how Krishna conscious I am. So if we're eating non-devotee made types of food, if we're eating these things, then what happens? Our consciousness goes down, and if we keep eating like that, then we start thinking, oh, what was it? I'm still feeling pretty good. I'm Krishna conscious, but our consciousness will actually be down, and then it becomes a norm. But if we're very strict and eating food that is only offered, cooked by devotees and offered for Krishna, then our consciousness can stay up, and we can stay strictly on the path of Krishna consciousness. that along, of course, with chanting Hare Krishna regularly. And the same thing with chanting. If we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, like regularly, like 16 rounds a day minimum, then it's very good for spiritual advancement. And if sometimes someone comes and speculates. I know one devotee who one of my god brothers, I won't mention names here, but he had said he'd given up chanting for years. He'd given up chanting, and he was feeling, and his justification was, well, Srila Prabhupada says we have to chant without offense, so therefore I cannot chant perfectly without offense, so therefore I should not chant. I kind of missed the point. He was outside when he was saying like that. That was the justification. I'm following Srila Prabhupada's instructions. We should not chant if we cannot chant without offense. So therefore, I cannot chant without offense. So therefore, I should not chant Hare Krishna. But that's not correct. We chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and we try our best to avoid the 10 offenses. Try our best, and if we keep trying our best to avoid the 10 offenses, then that chanting will become more effective, and we'll stay on the path. In fact, you'll stay on the path so much that Srila Prabhupada wrote many times in letters. Sometimes it was regarding initiations. He said if you chant your rounds, 16 rounds minimum every day, and you avoid you don't engage in those four sinful activities. If you do that, just by doing that, then at the end of your life, you'll go back home, back to Godhead. So he said like that, just by doing that. And so we might think, I had thought at that time. So that makes it sounds easy. We're chanting 16 rounds a day. That takes maybe 2 hours. The 4 regular principles don't take any time. So if I just chant 16 rounds and stay away from those, and stay away from the 4 sinful activities, then I got it made. Easy. But actually not so easy, because not everyone chants 16 rounds, and not everyone follows all the principles. The ability to continue chanting and following the regular principles is also a sign that we're on the path. We're staying on the path. If we are not chanting or we're not following the principles, then it's a deviation. As long as we can at least chant, keep following the principles, that we stay on the path. But of course, we can't. Like I said, 16 rounds takes maybe 2 hours a day. So we can't just sit around and do nothing or do a lot of nonsense all day while we're, after we chant our rounds. We cannot do that. You've got to be very active in a positive way in Krishna service. So the best thing is to keep always have so much to do in Krishna service that there's no time for nonsense, because it takes a real someone's got to be a little fixed in Krishna consciousness to be, to be able to be so self-controlled that they will keep themselves always engaged in Krishna service. So if we always are thinking, I've got so much to do, you complain, I got so much to do, no time. But if we have so much to do in Krishna service, then as soon as we finish one thing, the next thing is just waiting for us. Even if we can't keep up with it, the next thing is waiting for us to do. So and that's the sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti means that we are constantly practicing devotional service. And one of the in the Nectar of Devotion, in chapter 17, I believe, it says that there is for a devotee who has come to the platform of bhava, which is a preliminary stage before Krishna prema, love of Krishna. There's several symptoms. One of those symptoms is that they do not like to be idle at any moment. They don't want to be idle. They have to be constantly engaged. And we look in the lives of the acharyas, the ones that we are most familiar with. So Srila Prabhupada, of course, what did he do? He would sleep. This is one period of his life. When he was after he came to America, we know at least, he would whatever time he arrived at a temple, which whatever time it was, he would be up at 11 o'clock at night. He would rest. At 1 o'clock in the morning, he would sit down and write books. That's when these Srimad-bhagavatams were being translated and purports were being written. He would sit down and write for 6 hours. It's hard for us to sit down and do anything without falling asleep. But Srila Prabhupada actually sat down in the early hours of the morning, and he would write. And he wrote at that time because it's the only time that was quiet. Yeah, everyone was sleeping, so it was a time that was quiet. So he would write until about. He didn't usually actually go to Mangalarti because he was writing books, but he'd write until about 7 o'clock in the morning. He would come for around the time for greeting the deities, and if he was in a particular temple, he usually gives Srimad-bhagavatam Class in the morning, like that. So, and then he had his period of time. He had his time for speaking to especially the leaders, the ISKCON, the devotees or the leaders of presidents, GBCs, like that, in the temples. He had his time during that he was there for visitors to come and see him, speak with him. He had little time, to spend a little bit of time only for prasadam. He would rest a little bit in the afternoon because he actually was only sleeping 2 hours during the night, and took a nap for about an hour and a half in the afternoon. That's 3.5 hours. And he was resting. And he had, of course, he had this morning walk. That was usually before greeting the deities. Usually when Srila Prabhupada was present, he would, greeting the deities got held up a little bit, waiting for him to come back. But his whole day was completely filled. One time Srila Prabhupada, one time I know about, Srila Prabhupada had many, like 4 or 5 preaching engagements in one day. So he went out early in the morning, he'd go to someone's home, he would preach, then he would go to, and of course they all had prasadam waiting for him, but he was not eating it at that time. He would immediately go to the next engagement. So he had like 4 or 5 separate engagements in the course of the day. And he got back late at night, hadn't even stopped for prasadam. And then he said, "Oh, just bring me some hot milk and puris." These white puris with the powdered sugar on them. He said, "Bring these puris and hot milk." And he sat back and enjoyed drinking milk, eating the puris. And he said, "This is Krishna conscious life. All day preaching and a little prasadam." So like that. Another time Srila Prabhupada was, where's this from? I don't remember which. One of Srila Prabhupada's personal servants. Where this? Srila Prabhupada was, at nighttime he was getting ready to rest, and he sat down to rest, and then he said to his devotee serving him, he says, I hate doing this. Sleeping. I hate doing this. But then he lays down and immediately he's completely resting. But he didn't like it. He hated having to stop and rest. So, you know, we can't imitate Srila Prabhupada as far as, you know, those kind of things go. But the general principle is you eat what you need, you rest as much as you need, and you keep engaged in devotional service as much as you possibly can, so that we're busy, very busy in Krishna service up until the end of the day, and ultimately up to the end of our life. We keep engaging in devotional service, and in that way, by Krishna's blessings, we will remember Krishna at that last moment of death, of life, and we can go back to the spiritual world. That's what Srila Prabhupada, this is what he's taught us. And of course, he obviously showed that example himself, because up until even in the last days of his physical life in this world, when his body was in very difficult situation, but he was not attached to the body, even though his body was like skin and bones, and had no energy. He had not practically eaten anything for months. So you can imagine, he couldn't sit up on his own, but he was still there in full consciousness, Krishna consciousness, and was lying there. Somebody was holding the microphone for the dictaphone that he was using for translating, and he was dictating the purports to the. It was 10th canto Srimad-bhagavatam. There was I think those are volume 3. Those purports, if you read them, they're just as perfect and, say, lucid and perfect as all those Srila Prabhupada's purports. Even up to the last days and minutes and hours, practically, he was doing this devotional service. And we have an example also of one more example, I think, of Dhruva Maharaj. He was already pure from his childhood. He manifested that as pure love of God from his austerities when he was 5 years old. But at the end of his life, when he became, because he had been king for how long? 36,000 years, right? Sacha Yuga. So for 36,000 years, he ruled as the king. But at one point, he said, "Okay, enough. I'm getting old. Let me hand this over to someone else." And he went off to the Badarik ashram, the mountains. And he continued his devotional service. And he was already engaged in devotional service. He continued it, his daily, whatever his daily activities were. He just continued it there. But the time came for him to leave this world, leave this planet. So, and the two personalities, they were servants of the Lord, came, Nanda and Sunanda, their names. They were driving it's called a vimana, a spiritual airplane. So they brought it there. He was not fitting. He had not completed his daily morning devotional service. So even though they were there and they're waiting for it to take him, he continued and finished his particular service. He completed it. The point was, Srila Prabhupada's point was that up until the last moment of our life, as far as possible, we keep engaged in devotional service. We don't give it up and think, oh, I'm too old or I'm too advanced or anything. We continue. If nothing else, we chant Hare Krishna, but we never get to the point that we say, okay, I'm already advanced. Now I can sit back and relax and do nothing. No. If you think like that, then we maybe fall down the Maya again. So Dhruva Maharaj, he continued up to the last moment of his life, and then he went and he circumambulated the spiritual airplane and the associates of Lord Vishnu that had brought it. He circumambulated because it was a sign of respect, and then they were waiting for him to board the airplane to take him to ultimately to his planet. The planet was to be given to him through Loka. So, and then he, as he's about ready to step onto the airplane, Death personified, came there and bowed down, and so he could step on Death's head to step into the airplane, which means Death is actually assisting him. But he changed. But his body was not a. Usually we say the soul leaves the body and goes to the spiritual world. His body actually, because it was actually transformed into a spiritual body. His physical body somehow transformed into a spiritual body. So he left the world in his self-same body. This is unusual, but it happens in some cases. So he stepped into the Vimana and was taken to, well, it was actually Dhruva Loka, because the planet was given to him, because he had performed his austerities as a young child to get the best planet, not the best planet, but the best kingdom, a kingdom better than his father or his grandfather. His grandfather would be Lord Brahma, right? So he was even better than him. He wanted the best kingdom. And so when he actually got his benediction at the end of his life, that's where he went, to a spiritual planet. That spiritual planet, that Dhruva Loka, is called the North. We know it as the North Star, or the Pole Star, and it's actually a spiritual planet. So we can actually see a spiritual planet even with our material eyes in this case. Anyway, there's a couple points on this first. And any questions, comments? Oh, his mother, yes. Suniti. Suniti was his mother. Suniti, yes. Dhruva Maharaj was on his way back to in the Vimana, and then he was thinking, the only reason I went and worshipped Lord Vishnu and I'm getting this blessing now is because my mother gave me some good advice. She said because he had been a very he was feeling very unhappy that as a young child, because his father said, no, you cannot sit on my his father wanted him to allow him to sit on his lap along with his brother Uttama, but the stepmother, the mother of Uttama, said, no, you are not my child, so you cannot sit on his lap. You have to take birth again, and then you can sit. So he became very upset, and that's why he ultimately went to the forest to look for God, to try to become, get a material benediction of something better. Okay, you're not letting me do this. I'm going to get a kingdom that's better than any of yours. That was actually his material purpose. So yes, and because of that, because he remembered her, then he looked back, and she was in another Vimana behind him. She followed him there. So she also got a spiritual body and went there. Yes. Anyone else? Okay, so we'll end for today and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.